This is the ER channel, Empires and Revolution. It is early 1914, January the 18th, Munich. The Austrian police have been looking for a draft dodger. With the help of the German police, they have found him and tracked him down to his address, 34 Schleichheimerstrasse. They knock on his door and issue him with a summons to appear in the Austrian town of Linz 2 days later. Horrified at what might befall him, a possible jail sentence or a heavy fine, the young man decides to cooperate with the authorities. His name? Adolf Hitler. The previous year he had left Vienna and moved to Munich, where he made a living painting postcards and small artworks for tourists. But his main reason for coming to Munich was to avoid being drafted in the Austrian army. Hitler's motives for avoiding his military service are not actually known, but people have speculated that he did not want to serve in an army that was polyglot and multiracial. A more likely explanation is that he was still going through his Bohemian phase. Whatever the truth, he decides to do damage limitation. The next day, the 19th of January, he is escorted to the Austro-Hungarian consulate in Munich, where the seriousness with which the matter is dealt with terrifies him. He immediately hires a lawyer, Ernst Hepp. Hepp tries to calm the young man down, advising him to apologize and provide some excuses for why he avoided his military service. Hitler responds by writing the following letter, which is sent on the 21st of January. In the summons, I am called an artist. Although I am rightly accorded this title, it is nevertheless only conditionally correct. It is true that I earn my living as a freelance painter, but only since I am entirely without property in order to further my education. I am able to devote only a fraction of my time to earning a living, since I am still training myself as an architectural painter. Therefore, my income is a very modest one, just large enough for me to get along. As far as my sin of omission in the autumn of 1909 is concerned, this was a terribly bitter time for me. I was an inexperienced young man without any financial aid, and also too proud to accept any from anyone, let alone to ask for it. Without any support, dependent on myself alone, the few crowns or often coppers I earned from my works were scarcely sufficient to provide me with a bed. For 2 years I had no other friend but care and need, no other companion but eternally gnawing hunger. I never knew the beautiful word youth. Today, even after 5 years, I have the mementos in the form of chilblain sores on my fingers, hands, and feet, and yet I cannot recall this period without a certain rejoicing, now that I am almost all over the worst. In spite of the greatest misery, in the midst of often more than dubious surroundings, I have always preserved my name unsullied, am altogether blameless before the law, and pure before my own conscience. So, a couple of points to pick up there. First of all, Hitler manages to affect a tone of absolute self-righteousness, even though he has avoided the draft since 1909. And also, added to this tone of self-righteousness is a tone of self-pity. In particular, he says, I never knew the beautiful word youth. This sounds rather like Greta Thunberg telling an international audience that they have stolen her childhood. So in this early document, which was of course quickly suppressed when Hitler came to power, we see the first stirrings of Hitler's oratorical skill. Also, as no one actually knew that 1914 would be the start of the Great War, the Austrian army was still rather picky about who they selected for military service. By planting the meme of an impoverished, unhealthy artist in the minds of the draft board, Hitler's letter prepared the way for the decision that was reached on the 23rd of February when he finally underwent a medical examination. He was declared unfit for military service and, as a result of 5 years of privation, unsuitable for combat and support duty, too weak, incapable of firing weapons. Of course, a few months later, it would be a different story when Hitler volunteered to join the German army.